submit part 1 and part 2 for this week, right?
Yes. Part 1 and part 2.
I saw that we have to submit here with you and read it with you.
Sorry?
What do we have to submit in the peer review?
The first one was for you to your contract, right?
Yeah, I mean for part 2. We got first peer
Part
review.
2, you are meant to submit. Okay, maybe we should start with that this one.
No, no.
Sorry, do you have a Google Drive? You have a Google Drive?
Yes.
Okay. Can you send the zip of what we did last week?
Oh, sure.
And share the link with me. Okay. So, good morning, everybody, and I welcome you all to class this morning. I hope we all have a restful weekend, and it's a little bit busy because we have assignment and some few things to complete. And so last week we were able to start our Angular, and we worked on the bookstore. So we are able to complete everything, but I asked you to go and look at the video to complete. Right. So for this week, we'll be looking at still working with our Angular front end. We'll be working on the project called the Sports Store. Sports Store. So it's still similar to the bookstore, but this is we're trying to create an application for users to be able to create, select the items, put it in the shopping cart, and then maybe they check the items out, right? So that's the focus. We might not be able to create the payment platform, right? We might not focus on that, but focus on how to use Angular on the front end to create the shopping cart, right? So last week you had an assignment, a project. So I'm sure we are all in group. You belong to a specific group. So I hope we all belong to a specific group, right? So our first group project submission, first release, was for us to create a contract, right? And I explained how we can create a contract. The template also is available there, right? Just the names of the members of your group, the contract agreement, and you sign. And also you are meant to create a logo, right? For maybe just create a logo for your team or for your organization, right? So that was supposed to be the first release, the first submission. So the second release, which is due this week too, right? The first release I said should be due this week. Second release too will be due this week because the first one is just maybe little housekeeping. So the second release, if you have gone through, you have everything in your go to week 8, what we did last week, if you go to your course shell, week 8, go to your course shell week 8. If you scroll all the way down to where you have a team project component, we have the first project part 1 release, this contract, right? So the part 2, which is due end of this week, this is from week 8, right? So it's due next week, which is this week. If you click on it, you will see the PDF part 2, right? So for this part 2, we are meant to you are meant to, okay, let me just read it out. You are meant to create like a site, and your site must include a landing page that is appropriate for the web application that you have selected. So remember, there are 3 options last week. We said a survey. If you go back, we said there are 3 options for the project that your team can create. Go to the main part where we have on this one. There is a part that says, that gives you the option of what your group can create. One is a survey, right? So you choose any out of those 3. You choose any out of those 3 that you want to create as a team. So you choose any out of those 3 that you want to create as a team. Let me go back to your assessment, assignment, project. I know there are 3 options for you to choose from, right? One is the survey, right? So, but let me just run through it. So, whichever one you have created, you must create a landing page that is appropriate for the type of web application that you have selected as a team, right? So, the logo that you have created, make sure you are consistent with your logo. Every of what you are going to upload, your application, the presentation has to contain that logo. Okay, so you are meant to, out of these 3, to create an appropriate object or data associated with the type of site you have selected. So the site could be a survey site, a tournament site, or an incident management site. So your group can choose any out of those 3. If you want to create something on tournament, you agree. Is it on survey, or you want to create an incident management site, right? So it's up to you, but make sure all the group members, you have all agreed on the specific ones you want to create. So your landing page will allow the user to view an appropriate list of appropriate objects in a table dashboard, just like we did when we did the Express.js using EJS, right? So you should be able to see that, and your site should allow user to perform full CRUD operation, just like we did in when we use EJS, right? So full CRUD operation, create, read, update, and delete. For now, we have not done authentication, right? So you don't need authentication for now. So don't add authentication to it. Your site does not have to be pretty good at this stage. We are just building it up, and we're just trying to test some functionality, right? So your CRUD operation, which we are going to work on, we'll see how we can use Angular to create the CRUD operation, right? I hope we'll be able to complete everything, but if we are unable to complete it, I'll refer you back to a textbook that you can use, or you can watch the video. The textbook shows a step-by-step guide on how to create that. We'll try as much as possible to see if we can complete that. So CRUD operation using Angular. We already know how to do CRUD operation using EJS, right? So let's try and see what we can do with Angular. So you are meant to include a first draft of external design document, just a wireframe of that. Create a GitHub repository so that all your team members can have access to it, right? So you push it to GitHub. You must track your project using Agile project management. How many of us knows Agile? How to use Agile? There is a tool you can use, Jira. Jira. How many of us have used Jira before? Okay, you have used Jira before. Okay, so it will be nice for you to create that Jira. In this group, who has used Jira before? Nobody. So you might have to learn from other groups. So Jira helps you to you create the tasks like a sprint, right? You create a sprint, you create the tasks for each individual. Remember, we said we are going to create. You have to have a project manager, a UX design, but all of you are developers, right? All of you are developers. So you have to create that sprint and put in the tasks for each member, right? So you track the tasks. There is going to be a timeline, right, for each of the tasks. So you track it as well. So if you don't know how to use Jira, you can Google to watch a video. You can also connect with maybe other team members to guide you through. It's just for you to be able to manage your project so that you see the progress and you see that everybody is, carrying out the activity based on what you have in the sprint, and to know where each one of your member is at with each of the tasks in the project. So when you are done, you are meant to create a video presentation on YouTube, right? So you must create a PowerPoint slide. Make sure the name of your team members. Now it's not just only you, we are in team. So make sure the name of your team members and the logo. You have to be consistent with your logo, the student IDs of all your team members, the course code, the course name, and your project information. Remember, you either select one from the three: tournaments, maybe management of incidents, or survey. So the second slide, that's the first slide. Second slide of your slide deck must include current images. If you have any images that you have added, so you can put that. So one of you can volunteer to demonstrate in that video the functionality, right? The functionality. So you must add images of your team members too. Then one person can demonstrate the functionality in that video. So one or more of the team members can describe the code and the functionality. So sound, you can add sound for the videos, but make sure it's clear. Anything you are adding should be clear, right? Anything you are adding should be clear, and the video should not be more than 10 minutes. 5 minutes, I will appreciate it if it's 5 minutes, but it should not be more than 10 minutes, right? I hope you got that. So these are what we are going to be uploading: a link to your demo video, a snapshot of the project's current product backlog. So once you create that Jira, you see the backlog and everything. So you just upload the snapshots, right? The screen snapshots of where you are, right? Okay. So that's this week. That's what we are going to do. So you are meant to submit this alongside with the first one. So quickly, I will go to the PowerPoint slide. Like I mentioned that we might not be able to complete everything. It's it's well loaded and well packed. So how many of us have access to this textbook? I don't know whether you have access to it. Pro Angular 9. The textbook is by Adam Freeman. Adam Freeman. Nobody has that. Okay. So as to make it easier for us to work and to be able to complete our assignment, our tasks, let me see if I can share the link and see if you can log in using your Centennial College email. I don't know whether students have access to it. Okay, maybe by Thursday. Okay, so let me confirm whether you have access to it or not first. Okay, so, but it's a good textbook which you can just follow step by step. The code, everything is there. Right? All is just for you to just add it and run it. If there are issues, then you take off. At least it saves you time of cracking your brain for the code. Just there are instructions what the code is doing. Right. Okay, so that will help us to be fast. So if you can't complete anything in class, you can go back and check. Right. So, like I mentioned, if you are in week 9, we are going to be looking at the sports project. That is what we'll work on, and we are going to see how we can use Angular HTTP service and Express API. Right. So we know we are creating Angular front end. We need to connect to the back end. So we are going to be using an API that will be generated. So we'll just go through the slide quickly, then we'll start off the hands-on, right? So the hands-on, we might fall back and use the hands-on we uploaded in week 8 without URI, right? We'll go back and use that as a startup file because we are creating a new workspace entirely. The one we did last was for bookstore. We are going to start another one for the sports store, right? So, but let's quickly go through the slide, through the PowerPoint slide using HTTP, processing order, and the sports store project. Then we'll see how we can start up the. So this is just to explain some few things to us. Then the main goal is for us to start the sports project. Okay, so we'll look at the process order, and also we'll look at the sport project, the process order. We'll also take a look at the HTTP, using HTTP. So using the HTTP client, which we are going to be using in the project. So in Angular uses HTTP client as a way or as a means of communicating between the Angular application and your back end. Remember, you need to connect to the back end. So simply, what does it use? It uses the HTTP client to be able to do that connection. You are connecting from your front end to your back end. You need an API. So it uses the HTTP client as a means of communication. And to do that, the Angular HTTP client uses what we call observable pattern. It uses what we call observable pattern to deal with the synchronous nature. So HTTP clients, but it uses what we call observable pattern. So mostly when we run the instruction, we run it in serial, right? But most web application development, they lack what we call synchronicity. Remember, if you remember your JavaScript, we said you can send the request to the server either using synchronous or asynchronous requests. So, but most of the web application development suffers from what we call synchronicity. Most especially when you are dealing with data. Remember, you send the request, you are sending the data, you are receiving the response back. So, most especially when dealing with data, they suffer, web application development suffer from what we call lack of synchronicity, right? So to solve this issue, remember we always have like a callback function. If you can take your mind back to when we did our Google Maps in Comp 125, and also when we did Ajax, right? So we said there's always going to be like a callback function. So to be able to resolve that, we do use what we call callback function or promise pattern. Callback function or promise pattern. So we have the callback pattern, or you can say we have the promise pattern. Right. So the callback usually when you are running your JavaScript, like I've mentioned, they go for or they mostly uses what we call the JavaScript to be able to do that. While the promise also is already in existence, but the callback is more effective than the promise. So promise, why is promise not effective? Promise suffers from what we call a short one-time lifespan. So once you use promise once, after that there is likelihood that there will be it will start having issues. But the callback function is mostly more effective to provide synchronicity when you make a request to the server. Right. So we have a method called reactive programming. Reactive programming, which helps to be able to also solve this issue when you are using your callback function. So the reactive programming helps to track both the synchronous or asynchronous data. Remember we said you send a request to the server, it could be a synchronous request or asynchronous request, right? So you might do what we call reactive programming. And when we say reactive programming is just a way of tracking the asynchronous data. You know, your data keeps changing over time. You make a request to the server, you send the request to the server, the data keeps changing, right? So you need to keep track of how your data changes. The user puts in an input value now. Once the user wants to put in another value, it differs, right? So there are always changes. Even the same user can decide to modify the entry, to change the entry. So you need to keep track of that. So the reactive programming basically keeps track of asynchronous data as your data changes over time, and it uses what we call observables to do the tracking. So it uses what we call observables. We'll be injecting the observables in our application. So that is why I'm taking our time to go through the slide and to tell us what it means. So at the point you see where we have observables, so what is their observable doing? It's keeping track of, the asynchronous data. So observable, basically, they are streams of data that can be observed by one or multiple observers. So that is what observable, that is what it does. So it can observe one or more multiple streams of data. So once the observable emits a value over time, it will notify. This is silent. Sorry. Put this in silent. So the observer will emit values over time, and it will notify the subscribe. So you'll be seeing a function, or you'll be seeing what we call subscribe. Subscribe. So once the observable emits the value, it can also send if there is an error. If it's successful, it will return the value. If there is an error also, it will return the error message. So the observable will emit the value over time, and it will notify the subscribe. So the observers with the new value, or if there is an error. So we'll see that if there is an error message, or if it returns a value, it is the observables that assist in doing that. So this is a representation of what happens, a visual representation. So you can see, once your data changes, it is the observable that will keep track of that changes, right? And it keeps, tracking it if there's changes in data, right? So once there is an error also, it will keep track of that error message also. So that is what observables does. So we are going to be injecting the observables also in our application, because remember we said we are building a sports store application, and in that process, the user is going to create like a shopping cart, right? So if there is an error in the process of uploading the data, then it is the observable that helps to keep track of that, and we are going to inject the observable also in our application to be able to keep track of that. So that is what happens until it completes a cycle. So remember we said reactive programming. You might think that reactive programming is a bit difficult, but there are libraries. We have ReactiveX libraries, which will also be injecting in our application, which will help us to deal with the observable in a simple way. So it is the RX library that we're going to inject that will simplify how the observables, deals with the changes in data as the user, selects or puts in their data. So the reactive library, the ReactiveX library, is a cross-platform library. It's a cross-platform library which helps developers to manage asynchronous data changes. So the ReactiveX library will allow you to create and manipulate your observable objects. So Angular has what we call RxJS library. We used it last week in our bookstore. We are also going to be using it in the sports store. So basically, it's a JavaScript version of ReactiveX library. Right, so using the HTTP, we mentioned that it is the HTTP that creates a communication between the front end, the HTTP client creates a communication between the front end and the back end. Creates a communication between the front end and the back end. Right, so we are going to have the HTTP module also, which will help us to import and we'll inject and import the HTTP client also in our application that we are going to be building. So sending an API to the back end, we are going to be using the HTTP client to connect our front end Angular that we are creating front end application to our back end. So we'll look at that as well. Then the other process, once you have been able to create the form, for instance, we said we are creating a sports store. We want the user to come online, shop online, put their items in the shopping cart, and from that shopping cart, then you can proceed to the payment platform. Though we said we won't work with the payment platform, please don't get me, we won't get to that part, the payment platform. All what we are just going to do for this week is create the CRUD operation so that you can have the items listed, just like what we did when we used EJS. So you can edit, you can add, you understand, you can edit, you can add more items, And also, we'll have a like button whereby the user can make selection, select all the items and put it in the shopping cart, right? So we have the processing, what we call the processing orders, the processing order. So we are going to create some scripts as well to be able to keep track of the order fulfillment process, right? To keep track of the order fulfillment process. So being able to receive orders from customer is very, very important when we shop online. So when we are building our application, we need to consider that, and that is one of the things we are going to be, adding in our application. So there are some back-end services in Angular. They are not only specific to Angular application that we'll be making use of. So in the script that we are going to be writing to be able to complete that, we are going to have, it's going to describe our order, the order that is being placed by the user. So we are going to create a file called the order model.ts. Remember we said Angular uses TypeScript. Angular uses TypeScript. That was why when we started last week, we said we should install TypeScript. So we are going to have a file called order model.ts, right? Which will be in our model folder. So we inject the injectable and the cart, and we'll create a class called order. And in that class called order, we have the property. These are the properties in that class called order. We have the ID of the item, the name, the address, the city, the province, the postal code, the country, and the where it's being shipped to. And we also create a constructor for the shopping cart. So we create a constructor for the shopping cart. So we can say the order will be like a service, and we're going to create an instance to that. So when Angular creates the order object, it will detect the cart constructor. Once you create the order object, it will detect the cart constructor parameter, and we provide the same shopping cart for that object elsewhere in our application. So we'll be creating this object with these properties, and also we are going to create a constructor for that. So wherever in our application the user selects the item, right, we'll be able to create an instance for that. Also, as the user makes selections of the item based on their ID and the properties that we have set, we'll be updating the repository and the data source. We'll be updating the repository and the data source. So we are going to use a mock data. Mock data is just like a sample data, right? Sample data, we are going to create like a sample data, just like we did in our MongoDB. We had to put in some entries, right? So this is a sample data before we create we'll create our CRUD operation, and we have a button where we can add more data. So we'll create like a mock data for testing, and we'll put that in the static.datasource.ts file, which will be in our model folder, right? So we'll create that as well, and we'll log in the console. For now, since we are here to connect to the backend, here we are trying to, this is the mock data. That's the product that the user purchases. So for now, we'll put it in the, remember, this is the observable I mentioned earlier on, right? So it is the observables that helps to keep track of the changes. That is, the user selects a product, it will take it in. It selects another product, remember the data will change, right, based on the selection. So it is the observable that I mentioned earlier on that helps to keep track of that changes, right, based on the user's order or selection. So that is what the observable does. So we'll be seeing this, once you see this in our script, what it's trying to do is just trying to keep track of any changes. That is when the user selects an item, selects another item, selects another item. So it is the observables that keeps track of that changes, right? So once the user has finished selecting the item, for now, instead of taking it to our database, we want to log it in the console of the browser window to show us in JSON format. So we are using Springify. Springify will convert it into JSON objects, right? So it will display it in the console of our browser window, right? So just to provide a background before we start our hands-on, right? So, and to explain more of some of the terms that we have mentioned when we started the class, like the observable. So we all know what observable does, right? Okay, so we need to manage the order. To manage the order, we have to create a repository. We're going to create a repository called order repository.ts, and that will be in the model folder as well. So we are going to import the injectable, import the observable, import the order from where we have, remember we have created that order.ts file, then the static data source as well. So we use the export to export the class order repository, and we'll create a constructor. So we are going to create this as well as our repository. So updating the feature module. So after that, we need to register the order class in the repository. So we're going to be importing all of this. We also import the HTTP client module. Remember I said the HTTP client is what creates a communication between the front end and the back end, right? So we'll import that, and the providers will specify all the providers, the product repository, static, the cart, which we have already created, right? So in our line of code, by default, it will generate some code for us, right? So, but in our line of code, we have to add this, the order module, right? Model, and also the repository. We'll add it to that line. We'll add these two lines of script so that it will read the content in the order and also in the repository. So collecting the order details now, the checkout point. Collecting the order details, we also need to prepare a form. We also prepare a form to replace the code in the checkout.components.ts. We're going to have a file, checkout.components.ts, in the folder called store, in our app folder, in the SRC folder, right? So basically here, we are just trying to create a code for the checkout. Remember, once you keep it in the shopping cart, you need to check the content out. So in collecting the order details, we also use our CSS to organize the content of what we have, and also we also work on the template. We also finalize the templates component, which is our checkout.component.html. This is a form. This is the form that will be displayed. If you can take your mind back to what we did in our EJS, when we use EJS, we also created a form, right? So this is the form, which is component.html, which will contain the view that will be displayed where the user can make an entry. So this is basically a form which contains, we said, the ID, the name of the item. So if you scroll down, you will see all the country, the postal code of the person making the. So all of this, and we can validate. Remember, we say it's always good to validate our user input, right? So we'll have all of this. So this is just a form. So this is the output of that form that will be created also. So once you click on add to cart button to add the product to cart. So we'll be creating that, and once the user click on complete order, then we'll have this. So that will be the focus of what we are going to do this week. And we have one more slide, which is the sports store project, which is the project we are creating. Let me just explain some few things that we'll expect sports store project. So let me just, so this slide just talks about what we expect in that project and the code. Some of this code we'll be using, not even some, most of the code. So at the point, instead of typing, I might copy and paste some of this code, then we will modify it. Because typing, I discover, takes time, and we might not be able to complete it. Just like what happened to us in the bookstore. Right, so here, the sports store project, Angular supports a feature called URL routing. Remember, we all know what routing is, to be able to inject and to display your views in the browser window. So also, we'll be creating in the sports store project, we are going to create an appropriate route, URL, to be able to display the content on each page. Like we have here in the table, we are going to create a URL that will point to the store, to the shopping cart, and also to the checkout. To the store, to the shopping cart, and also to the checkout. So what will the routing to the store, what will it display? It will display the list of products. It will display the list of products, just like we did in the bookstore, right? It will display the list of books for the bookstore, but this is a sports store, so it will display the list of products. So we also have another one, which is the cart. The URL will have to display the cart details, right? Once the user puts an item in the shopping cart, it will display the cart details. Then we also have the router to the checkout. So it will display the checkout process also, right? So we have cart details component.txt. We also have the checkout.component.txt, which will contain all those scripts. So we also register the components. We are going to modify the store.module.txt folder, and we are going to import the card details and the checkout components into the scripts, right? So I've put it in silence. I don't know what's going on. Sorry. I think I should put it off. So we'll quickly go into the okay. So let's see if we have access to this textbook, which will make it easier for every one of us, right? Then I will upload the link to the eCentennial now, and you check if you have access to it as a student. If you don't have access to it as a student, then maybe instead of typing, I have to provide other options for us. So let me quickly check that then, because we are unable to complete that bookstore. So give me a second. So this book will be helpful for those of us. Okay, let me just pull up the, if you are interested. So if you are interested, sorry, VGA. So I'm going to send a link. Check whether you have access to it as a student. If you don't have access to it, then just continue. So this is a recommended textbook. Pro Angular 9, build powerful and dynamic web apps. Right.
Can you buy that? Is it online?
No, I want to check if you have access to it. So I'm going to send a link now. Let me send a link to the class and check whether you have access to it. Whether you have access to it. So as to make our work easier, right? Because last week we couldn't achieve 100%, right? So I will send a link to the entire class now. Check whether you have access to it as a student. This is section 004, right? So that we'll start the bookstore. Okay, I'm going to send it to everybody in the class list now. Check if you have received it. If you are able to go to that link, it lets me know. If not, we'll just start up we'll start up the hands-on straight away using we are going to create the sports store. So I'm just providing this in case we are unable to complete it, like what happened last week, so that okay. Check your email now. Check your email. Check your email. Let's see whether you have access to it. It's free. So I don't know whether you have access to it. If you are to sign up, use your Centennial College email. Use your Centennial College email. Use your Centennial College email. Let's see, do you have access to it? Try and sign in using your email through that link. Through the link that I sent. Yeah? Not free trial. You should be able to have like so let me know if you have access to it. If not, let's just start. Just trying to avoid not completing the whole application.
Sorry, did you say that you emailed it to us?
Sorry?
Did you say that you emailed it to us or uploaded it?
I've sent it to the link to the textbook to your email.
Thank you.
So let's see whether you have access to it.
Yes.
You have access to it? Oh! Okay, so if you have access to it, that makes. So do you all have access to it? Please confirm.
Yes.
You have access to it. Right? Please check for those of do you have access to it? Okay. Do you have access to it? Please assist. Please confirm, do you have access to it now? So that makes our work easier so that we can be able to complete. If we are able to complete it in class, right.
Do we need to start a free trial?
Not start free trial. Sign in. Sign in with your Centennial College email. So I gave you this now so that you can be able to work easily and on your project. right? So, I hope this works, this helps.
Yeah.
I hope this helps, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So if you are unable to complete, you can complete this in class, right? Okay, so if you go through that, if you open the book, I'm trying to open mine. Mine is not opening again. So if you open it, we are basically working the bookstore project. Hello, the bookstore project is in chapter 7, 8, and 9. Okay, so now the data file that we are going to be using, we will use the data file from week, not last week. Last week we have used on it, so we have created the bookstore. So we'll use the data file before the last week, that is without URI. The week 7 sample without URI. Go back to that data file, the startup file we used for last week. You can go back to your course shell. Go back to the course shell, you will see that. If you can't find it, maybe I should re-upload another one for week 8. Remember, if you open it, we have to install our Angular, right? So let me go back to so if you can't find yours, let me see if I can upload sample, no URI. I want to try and remove my URI. So you have to add your own URI. Have we been able to open it? So you have to add your own URI to it. Let me see. So once you open it, add your own URI from your project, from the previous one. Did we all get that? Is it clear? Is it clear? I hope that is clear to everyone. So
Nice and good.
the startup file we used,
The one that you uploaded?
the one that we used before now, before last week. Remember last week we had a startup file without URI. Go to week 8. Go to week 8. I think I uploaded that. Go to week 8 because we have modified that with store. I don't want it to complete. So go to week 8. Go to week 8. If you go back to week 8, let me go to week 8. If you go back to week 8, we have the file that says week 7 sample, no URI. Week 7 sample, no URI. Did we all get that? Week 7 sample, no URI. If you want to use the current one that you have worked on, you can use it. But we are going to create another workspace for the sports store project, right? Okay. So if you have been able to open that, let me see. Put your URI there and make sure it's so put your URI there and make sure you are connected. You try it out, your node done. This one is crashing. Okay, I don't have my URI, so let me add my URI to this. Okay, let me add my URI. So add your URI, run it, your download more, make sure it's connected, then we'll start off the bookstore. So let me try and add my URI. Mine is still trying to, I want to be sure it's connected. Mine is still trying to connect, then we'll start there. Mine is still trying to connect. I hope we are able to connect. It says connected to MongoDB. Oh, mine is crashing. Mine is crashing. You have to add your URL. Let me check.
Server config at DB. Don't have my because my one is not working.
Okay.
I don't know why it's not working. It's just saying cannot connect it.
Mine is not connected. Okay. If it's, how many of us are able to connect? How many of us are able to plug? Mine is not connecting.
I think you just have to add the URI section.
I have added the URI. I have added the URI. I've added my URI. Wow. And it's still crashing. Okay. And I still launched it earlier this morning and connected. Okay. Okay. So I will just give the instruction. I'll try and see. Let me try one more time. Let me try one more time, then I will let me try one more time, then I will. Let me try one more time, then we'll start the stop. So if it's not connecting me, how many of us are unable to connect? You are still finding. Wow. So let me try one more time. If it's not connected, I will just start it up. Okay. Crashing is not okay. Let's just start it up. Let's start it up. Since even it's not connected to the database. Since we are going to work with Angular, right? So I'll just start it off, but you can. I just wanted to be sure that it's still up and it's still running, right? Okay. So I'll just give instructions and we'll continue. So let's just continue building the App Store. Remember we said we have to install Angular, right, since we are using Angular. So what we did for the bookstore, we'll just start it up that way. So to install your Angular is in the Angular documentation. You can get that online. So same as what we did last week. So I'll just continue whether it's connected to the server or not.
Can you use the local server?
You can use the local server, but yeah, just to try. We are not even connecting for now. We are trying to create the front end for now, right? Okay, so let's install Angular, right? So npm, just like we did last week, install Angular /CLI command line interface npm space install space -g @Angular /CLI. So let's install that. After installation, we will now, if you go back to the Angular documentation, for those of us that were not around, in the Angular documentation, we said you create a new workspace, right? What we did last week, the workspace we created last week was for bookstore. So we're going to create a new workspace for the sports store. So mine is still installing. Okay, so it's done now. So if you go to Angular, for those of us that were not in class, if you go to angular.io, we have the documentation there. So we are going to create a new workspace. And to create a new workspace, I'm sure we can remember the command.
Sorry, mine is giving an error.
Sorry?
Mine is giving me an error.
Before we create the workspace, we'll create the routing. Remember we talked about the routing, the question.
Yeah, so it couldn't list already.
So we created, just give me a second, I'll be with you. We created the routing, we also created we added the CSS, right? The skip git and the skip test, right? So same, we are going to add for the sports store. So if you go back after installing the Angular, ng space new space the name of the workspace you are trying to create. We are trying to create this workspace called sports store. So we have sports, well,
Just the T on sports.
okay. So ng space new space sports store space dash dash routing equals to, last week we said equals to true, we can set it to false and we'll still reset it back. Space dash dash the style, can set the routing to true, but by default we said it is false. So space dash dash the style, we said the style that we're going to be using will be CSS. You can leave the equals to out, you can leave the equals to out, they're still same, you still have it this way. So let me just go by what you have in your textbook so that you won't say she's typing. It's equals to, last week we said by default it is false, the router, but you can set it to true because we are going to add the router. Then we said the style we are going to use, you choose, you select the style, space, let me put the equals to sign so that I won't confuse you. Space dash dash style equals to, we said we are using CSS. If you go back to that documentation, it says style. For those of us that were not around, we are adding the style, and the style we are using is CSS. Right. Space dash dash style equals to CSS space dash dash skip git skip dash git equals to true. Also, we have space dash dash skip dash, okay, let's go back to the documentation. Skip text, skip dash text, there is an S there. Skip, okay, skip dash text equals to true. We have added the style, we have added the skip git, we have added the skip test. Okay. Let me set the router to true. Okay. So enter. Did you mean new? Okay. Let me go back. Okay, let's, oh. ng, oh, did I press N? ng space new space sports. I hope my spelling is not wrong. Store space dash dash routing equals true space dash dash skip dash text equals true space dash dash style equals CSS space dash dash skip dash git equals true. Okay, I hope there is no error. Okay. Probably there was an error. Maybe new. Maybe I didn't add it.
Skip equal true.
Skip git or skip text. Skip dash git equals true. Skip dash text equals true. Right. So we're trying to create the workspace for that. Just what we did earlier last week. But instead of creating for bookstore, we are creating for sports store.
Also route it needs to be true.
Put the route into true. If you set it to false, you still use the router later, right? So if you set it to false, it's okay if it's not giving you any error, right?
Sorry, can you help me with this installation?
So you can set it to false, we'll still use the router, we'll still inject the router, so it will still take effect. Sorry?
Yeah, so there is a problem with my installation. It's
So mine is still installing. What's the error? NPM, root PM. Root PM, check your spellings. Okay. So are we all there? Mine is still loading.
Miss, can you help me check?
So you can set it to routing equals to false. We'll see inject the router. So after creating the, so you should have the spot store somewhere.
Miss,
So you should have the spot store folder. Do we all have the spot store folder? Okay, give me a second.
can I see the last code?
The last code. So you can set the routing. You can set the routing to false. Still okay. So we'll add some npm packages. Remember when we created the bookstore, we added some packages, right? So you're going to add some npm packages. For you to add npm packages, you have to be in your workspace. So cd spot store. Can I
Do we
proceed?
have to add spot in the file?
Sports store.
Okay.
So I created the workspace for the sports store.
Because I have seen like
ng new workspace sports store, right? So I add the routing. You can set the routing to false. If you set it to false, you will see inject it in your application. So once you are done, you see the folder called sports store. So the next thing, we want to install some other packages that we will need alongside with it. And to install the packages, you have to change your directory to that folder. So cd sports store. Make sure your spelling is correct. cd sports store. Then we'll install Bootstrap. Last week we used Bootstrap, so also we are using Bootstrap. So npm install Bootstrap. You can put the version of Bootstrap we want to install. But last week when we installed the Bootstrap, we did not add the version. We just say npm install Bootstrap. For the fourth also, we also installed the Bootstrap for the jQuery, and also for the fourth also for the jQuery and the types. So let's install Bootstrap. I don't know whether you cannot see. Oh my God. Okay. Wow, I've closed it up. Oh my God. we'll add the following packages that we'll be using. npm install bootstrap, will install version 4.4.1. npm install bootstrap at 4.4.1. Enter. Oh, my disk space is full. Okay, yours should be successful, right?
Yes.
Mine says my disk space is full.
Sorry, could you show the command?
Huh?
Could you show the command?
The command.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. The command is npm install bootstrap, the version of the bootstrap 4.4.1, right? We are just installing packages, npm packages that we're going to use for the application. The next one will add the font also, right? So npm, can I scroll? Okay. So npm install at font awesome / font awesome dash free. We are using the free 5.12.1. npm install. Let me see if I can move. Okay, let me clear the log and do it. Let me clear it so that. So let me clear. Okay. So npm. So let me clear the log so that you can see that npm install space at font awesome / font awesome dash free. We are installing the free version. We are using the free version at version 5.12.1. At version 5.12.1. Enter. Okay, I think this one has a space for it. Then the next one, we will install the JSON server. My system is full, but it should work for you. Is it true?
Yes.
Is it successful? Don't look at what you are saying here. I need to really work on my system. Oh my God. And I deleted some files over the weekend. Okay. So the next thing, we'll install the JSON server. Remember we said it's going to return everything in JSON. First of all, we'll log it into the console in JSON format. Also, we'll send it to the back end. We'll also be installing the JSON web token so that subsequently we'll still do authentication. So npm space install space -- save - dev development dev. Okay, let me clear CLS so that you can see it. npm install space -- save - dev space JSON - server at 0.16.0. Let me see. JSON - server. Enter. Please don't look at what you see here. I hope it's successful for everyone. Right? Mine is saying no space left on your device, so don't worry at my device. But is it successful for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So we will install the JSON web token now. So npm space install space -- save dash dev space JSON web token at the version 8.5.1. Enter. It should be successful for you too as well.
Sorry, can we see the code again? The last one.
The last one,
Yeah.
JSON web token. So this is it.
Oh, okay.
So let me highlight it if you can see.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's the package.json. Let me open. So the Angular. So go to your sports. Open the sports store folder. In the Angular, open the Angular.json file. Open the Angular.json file. We did this last week as well. Scroll to where you have styles, right? You can remember what we did last week. Where we have styles, remember we have added some new styles from Bootstrap, right? So we'll have to add it. Our application is going to use that style. By default, this is the style that we have. So we have to add that to it. So after the src styles.css, after that we'll add the style from the node modules. Remember when we created the application, it created the node modules for us. And inside the node modules, we have the Bootstrap style. That's what we did last week. So we are going to reference the path so that it will use that style in our application. So it will be the node_modules. You can open up the folder and check /. In that folder, we have Bootstrap /. We have a folder called dist /. We have a folder called CSS Bootstrap dot. We are going to use the minified version .min.css. And that's with a comma. Node_modules Bootstrap dot this dot .css / bootstrap dot main dot css. Okay, so let's go and check
The comma before it with the styles CSS.
Okay, so I was wondering what I had. Thank you. So thank you for that. So we'll move to the, we also have the font awesome. Remember we installed the font awesome, right? So let's add the font awesome as well. The font awesome also is inside that nodules folder. So we'll read that node_modules / at font awesome / font awesome -free /css -all .min .css. You don't need to add a comma at the end of that one, being the last line of scripts there. Right. So you can save that, we'll still continue. So after that, we've been able to add the CSS. All of these parts, if you go back to your node modules, you have them in. We looked at it last week. So in the script section, if you go to the script section, here it is empty. The script that we are going to be using, part of what we have installed from bootstrap, we are going to add the scripts that we are going to be using. So if you go to the scripts, section in the package.json. So we are going to add this so that when the JSON, when the server starts loading, it can also read this script. So we'll say ng Angular will be ng we have a comma after that, scripts ng full column I'm trying to see why we're having error here. Okay, let's continue in a bit. We'll
I think you have to add the JS file in.
huh?
The scripts, you have to add the JS file.
Okay, let's add it in the package.json. Let me undo. Right. So let's open the package.json. Go to the package.json file. I think we have where we have scripts there. Okay, or we'll go back to that file. Okay, so let's go back to Angular dots. Okay, let me see. So we have it in scripts here. So let's add that. We are having an error. That is why I had to go back. Add the statement to the script section of the package.json file so that the JSON server package can be started from the command line. So we have the angular.json, we have your style. We need to add the scripts for it. So we have scripts ng. I don't know why we are having an error. Okay, let's type this.
Maybe it should be added in the package, not please.
In the package.json file. Okay, let's add it. Let me see. Last week we added it to the package.json file, right? So let's go back to the package.json file. Oh, I've messed this up. Let me remove this. Okay. So let's go to the package.json file. We are meant to add it in the package.json file. Remember last week we added it to the package.json file. If you go to the package.json file, where we have Angular, we have ng. Okay, let me see, scripts. Okay, so go to your package.json file, just like we did last week. By default, we have the ng, the start, the view, the watch, the text. We are going to add the linting, the links, and the E to E. Then also we add the line of scripts. So we don't have. So after that, after the text, put a comma, enter. So we'll add the links for linting, for code linting. That will be ng space lint, comma, enter. Let's add the E to E. E to E, full column. We have ng space E to E, comma. So we'll also add the JSON, right, file so that the JSON server package can be started when you run the application. So we'll say JSON. Remember we said we are going to send it as an API in JSON format. So JSON, please you have to add is in the package.json file, please. So JSON we'll add our JSON server, JSON-server space. We are still going to create a file called data.js. So data.js. So we are still going to create a file, but let's just keep the name of the file. Data.js space -p the port number where it will run. I'm sure we can remember all this. We did this even in the bookstore that we did last week. Space. We are still going to create another file also called alt middleware. So let's add that to that. Alt middleware.js. We are still going to create this file also. .js. Okay. So we can save this. Okay, so the next thing, remember we said the data.js file, we need to create it. We need to create the data.js file. So to create the data.js file, we'll go back to our sports store folder. So go to your sports store folder, right? We'll right click on it, then we'll create a file and we'll name the file. So right click on the sports store folder, click on new file, then we'll name that file data.js. So in the data.js file, we are going to write the following script: module to export a function, and in that module to export a function, we'll put in the mock, remember the sample data, right? Remember from the PowerPoint slide we explained earlier on, so the mock data that we want to use. So I will say module dot export will execute a function that's an anonymous function, and the statement will execute will tell it to return. The statement will execute. If they're saying it, because even the light is. I think we should get it. Because even the light is reflecting. Okay. We should return. We are going to create the product. So we have product. So remember we are creating the mock. So we'll have the ID, the product ID 1, comma, the name of the product. We'll call that kayak. Put it in quotes. I hope you can see what I'm typing. Okay, I think you guys can even see it better than what I'm seeing here. So ID, that's the first item, kayak, the category. We have a comma, the category. So we create a category. We have a field called category, and we call that waterproof or water sports. The sport guys should understand it better. Water sports. So we also have another field or another property of this object product called description. So we have a boat for one person. A boat for one person, comma, the price. So for the price, we have 275. Maybe I should break it so that we can see. Price 275. Let me break it down. Category water sports. Category. So I'm trying to see where we have the error. Okay, let me break it down. Let's ID name. So let's break it down so that we can be able to see where we have the error.
After the process, we have a square bracket instead of the curly bracket.
Curly brackets, yes, that's right. That means we were following in the bookstore. So this is a square bracket, is not a curly bracket. So it's a square bracket, so that's for product 1, right? So we'll do for product 2. Remember, it's just a mock data. So let me copy and paste. This, and then so let's copy and paste this still in that square bracket. So let's copy and paste this. I will copy. How many do we have? We have up to 10 or 9. Up to 9. So copy that 8 more times. Then we'll modify. So you put it before the square bracket, enter. And you can still organize it, adjust it. So the first one, we have ID. The second one will be ID will be 2. So let's modify that. ID 2. Then the name will be life jackets. So let's call that life jacket. And the category is still water sport. The description is protective and fashionable. So let's change that. Protective and fashionable, right? And the price is 48.9. Wow. Sorry. I think I need a new system. My keyboard is stiff. Okay, so let me just, okay, it's back now. Wow. Maybe I should write it on the board. My keyboard is stiff. What's happening this morning? Have I over? Okay, so it's 48.95. So the second item, ID, that is 3. We have the name is soccer ball. The name is soccer ball. The category is soccer. The description is FIFA sorry, FIFA approved size and weight. FIFA approved size and weight, and the price is 19.50. 19.50. Okay, so the next one, ID 4, we have name is Corner Flag. So change the kayak to Corner Flags. The category is soccer. The description is give your displaying field a professional touch. So take that off. So we have give your playing field a professional touch, and the price is 34.95. So we'll have the next item, ID 5. The name of that is, so it's 5, not 15, please. 5. Just hold on, it's loading. Okay. So the name is Stadium. Category is soccer. The description is flat packed 35,000 seats. So flat packed 35,000 seats stadium, and the price is 79,500. So we have the next one, which is ID 6. ID 6. ID 6. The name of that product is Thinking Cap. Thinking Cap. The category is chess. The description we have here is improve brain efficiency by 75%. Well, do we have a thinking cap that's improve brain efficiency by 75%, and the price, sorry, by 75%. So you go to price, the price is 16. So you change that price to 16, right? Then we move to the next product, ID 7. Wow. ID 7. Okay. The name is Unsteady Chair. The name of that product is, wow, unsteady chair. The category is chess. Chess. The description is secretly give your opponent a disadvantage. Secretly give your opponent a disadvantage. Wow. Advantage. This is give, please. Let's type well. Then the price is 29.95. Then the eighth item ID 8 name human chessboard. The name of that product is human chess board. Human chess board, and the category is chess. The description is a fun game for the family. So the description is a fun game for the family, and the price is 75. ID is, the next one is 9. So we all have access to this book now. So by next class, for us to be very fast, we just explain, we'll copy and paste the code. Is it right? Do we all agree to do that? Or you want us to be typing and typing? We will finish this application the way we are going, right? So, but I will explain what we are to do. I will try and we'll copy and paste the code, and I will explain so that we can be very fast. We have used a lot of time typing this, and I think from the book we can copy. Can somebody confirm?
Yes.
We can copy and paste, right? So that at least let's build our application to a point. So, okay. So we are all on the same page. So once I'm copying and pasting and explaining, you all understand, right? Okay, so that will, okay. So that's the essence of having the book, of giving you the book, the access to the book. So the 9th product, we have the name Blink King. And the category is chess, because we have wasted a lot of time typing. You already know what we are doing. Description is gold plated diamond studded king, and the price is 1,200. Okay, so we will also create, so let me delete the last one here. It's only 9, 1 to 9. Right, so after the product, put a comma after the square bracket. We also create the order. So let's just put that there. Orders, full column. Let's leave our square brackets. We'll still add the orders as we we proceed. So here, simply what we have done, we have defined two data collections that we are going to use for our RESTful web service to send the API, so to send the content. The product collection and the order collection. So order will contain the order that the customer places, right? While product will contain all the products, all the available items, right? So we are going to create another file called alt middleware. Also in that sports folder, sports store folder. So let's go back, save this. Okay, save this. Go and right click on the sports store folder, new file. We'll call that file alt middleware. So alt middleware, I think we should just go and copy. If you can open that book, let's go and copy and paste.
I think you missed .js.
Oh, .js, please. So I have to go back and rename. Rename, thank you so much. Rename alt middleware.js. Okay. Alt middleware.js. So in that, we'll declare a variable constant for the JWT token, for the secret, app secret, the username, the password, and we'll create a mapping using the get and post method for the products and the orders. And we'll create a function called require alt method to read the URL. So we are using a method to lowercase method. Then we are also using the find method to find the URL. Then we have the module.export. We want to export the function request rex and next request. So we have the URL that will point to the login page, right? If the requested URL ends with the login page, we are using the post method. I'm just explaining the script you have there, right? If you open your, please open the book. Let me see if I can open mine from here. No. I think I've closed the book. Okay, so if you have it open, okay. So if you have it open, the line of script, we have the module.export. So if the requested URL ends with the login page, try to access the login page using the post method. Then we'll have the username, just like we did in our EJS, right? We put in the username and the password. Then we are going to use a token. Let token equals to jwt.sign-in, right? So if it's successful, it will return the token. If it's not successful, we have rest.json. Success will be false. Let me see if I can open the book here.
Continue.
So let's start. This is the front cover. One part one. Okay. So we are on page 8 of that chapter. Oh. Okay. So here, once the user puts in the username and password, If it's successful, it will return a token, right? The JWT token. If it's not, that is false. So you end the response, you return. So else if the required authentication, the required method meets the URL, it will create a header for the token. Then we have the bearer object, it will return it in token string. It will now verify that token using the app secret. To verify the token using the app secret, then rest.render the status code if it is successful and it is not successful. If you have 401 error, what does it mean? 200 means successful, 401 means what? That's the client side error, right? Okay, so let's just copy this, right? Copy all of this and put it in that alt middleware JS instead of us typing. So by next class we'll do more of copying and I'll explain the code. I hope we have all agreed to do that.
Is there a page number or is it just chapter 7?
This is page 9 in chapter, page 8 pulling to page 9 in chapter 7. Instead of typing, let's just copy and paste that, right? And let's save. So that is the alt middleware dot JS, right? So we are going to prepare the HTML file now. So every Angular application relies on an HTML file that will be loaded in the browser, that will be launched in the browser, and it will start the application. So if you go to the sports folder in the SRC, you have the SRC, make sure you save this. Always save whatsoever you have done. My this is full, so my, if you see this app is not yet saved. Mine is full, so might not save. So if you go to the sports folder, we have the SRC folder. So in the SRC folder, we have the index.html file. Open the index.html file. So we're going to do a little modification there. You already have, by default, it's showing the title, the favicon, that's the logo, right? And we have in the body, we have the app root. So we are going to add, after the favicon, the header, in the body, we are going to set the body as class, and we are going to reference the app. We are going to say App Store will go here. So in the body of, we'll create the body with class equals to m-2. So after that, within the opening and closing of the body, we'll say the app should display, open the app, close the app, and it should display App Store will go here. Sports Store will go here, right? So sports store will go here. So you can mark the app root that you have there as comment, or you delete it, but let's mark it as comment in case you will still need it. So let's just mark it as comment in case we still need it. So let's save this. So the next thing we want to do, we want to create the folder structure. we are going to add the structure to the project. We'll create additional folders now. And the additional folders that we're going to create, if you go back to the page, you scroll down, we are going to add these additional pages, these additional folders to the existing folder. So, the sports store, the SRC folder, the app, we are going to create a folder by name model. So let's go back. So we have the sports store, the SRC folder, we have the app folder. So we'll right click on the app folder, we'll create a new folder. We call that model. So the model folder will contain the code for all our data model, and also in that app folder, we right click on it, we'll create a new folder, we'll call it store. We call it store, right? So this folder will contain the functionality for basic shopping. So we'll also create another folder in the app. Make sure you are in the app folder. Right click on it. We'll create a new folder. We'll call that admin. So this folder will contain the functionality for the administration. So let's try and run this application now. Make sure you go to your terminal. You are in the sports store workspace. Oh, did I want to be here. CLS to close, put in the terminal. So make sure you are in the sports store workspace. So you can run that simple application. ng space serve space dash dash space dash dash open. Okay. So if you press enter, it should open up that application and shows App Store Gold here. Then the next, wow, we've exceeded our time and you guys are just quiet. So we'll end it for today. Please, you have what we need, right? So we have what we need. We'll continue from there. So by next class, we won't be doing more of typing. I'll just explain the code, then we'll copy and we. So if you launch it now, you should see on your browser window. Did we all see that? Did we all see that? App Store will go here. Right. Okay. First